My name is Rachel Anderson, and I'm 35 years old. For years, I've carried a secret, one tied to the greatest conflict of my life, my relationship with my mother, Margaret. To the city of Boston, she was the epitome of perfection, but to me, she was the shadow that loomed over my childhood and adulthood. From the outside, people envied our family's glamour and prestige, but if you'd lived in that house, you'd know that even the grandest, brightly lit mansions can feel like gilded cages trapping a soul. I grew up in the 1990s in an upscale New England neighborhood where lawns were meticulously trimmed and cocktail parties measured social status. My father, Thomas, was the only source of warmth in our home. At the dinner table, he'd nudge my elbow and whisper, "Just be yourself, Rachel Bear. That's enough." Those simple, warm words wrapped around my heart like a blanket when my mother's scolding stung. But sadly, I only heard them until I was 12, when my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. From that day on, I lost the shield that protected me from my mother's harshness. My mother, Margaret, was a woman of impeccable standards. She never appeared at the women's club with a single hair out of place. Her dresses were always pressed, her heels polished, and her smile just polite enough to command admiration. As her only daughter, I became her greatest project. She wanted me to be a perfect replica of her image. But that wasn't me. I loved drawing, photography, and reading under the backyard tree instead of practicing social speeches. I preferred sneakers to high heels, but every time I showed my true self, I'd see her subtle frown, enough to shatter my joy. Some memories are etched deeply in my mind, like the morning when I was 9, racing downstairs to show off a painting of my beloved cat. My father grinned, saying, "That's amazing, sweetheart." But my mother glanced at it and said, "A green cat? You can't do things so bizarre, Rachel." I rolled up the painting, hid it under my pillow, and rarely showed my art to anyone after that. After my father's death, things grew even harsher. My mother imposed impossible expectations. No B's on my report card, dresses chosen to flatter my figure, friends from respectable families. I vividly remember bringing home a B+ in math and her sigh, "Harvard doesn't accept B students, Rachel." That comment cut like a knife, making me feel I'd never be enough. When I tried on a dress my best friend gave me, she remarked coldly, "That dress makes your hips look wide, absolutely dreadful." I threw it in the trash that night. To outsiders, I was a girl who had it all: stellar grades, prestigious club memberships, a poised smile. But inside, I felt like an empty shell. I wasn't living my life. I was competing in an endless contest, with my mother as the sole judge. My father's empty chair at the dinner table reminded me that the only person who accepted my imperfections was gone forever. At a summer party once, I overheard my mother chatting with the ladies from her club. One asked, "What does Rachel love most?" I held my breath, hoping she'd mention my photography or art, passions I barely dared to keep. But she smiled and said, "She excels at public speaking and has leadership potential, destined for law or business." I forced a smile, but inside, I was hollow. It was as if I were a character in a novel she'd written, with no right to edit the story. Looking back on that childhood, I realized I'd mastered a skill: anticipation. I knew exactly when my mother would frown or criticize, and I dodged before it happened. I chose friends she approved of, wore clothes she deemed suitable, and slowly, I forgot who I really was. I lived haunted by the fear of never being good enough, and that fear drove me to choices I both regret and am grateful for, because they led me to love and also into a spiral of deception with my mother. As I write these words, I know that original wound was the starting point for every upheaval. The love I chose, the marriage I hid, and the child I didn't dare reveal, all stemmed from the fear of my mother's towering shadow. But I also know I can't live in that cage forever. One day, the truth will burst free, and I'll either pay a price or find liberation. If you've ever felt like you're never good enough in someone's eyes, especially family, you'll understand my pain. I'm sharing this story not just to open up, but to remind us that control and expectations can leave lasting scars on the soul. Have you ever had to live a life someone else designed for you? Share your experiences in the comments. Your story might help someone feel less alone. If anyone asked me, what moment changed the course of your life? I'd answer without hesitation. The morning I spilled coffee on a stranger at my new office in Seattle. I never imagined that clumsy moment would open the door to love and pull me into a web of unpredictable secrets. I left Boston at 27. After years under my mother's oppressive shadow, I took a job in Seattle, thousands of miles away. I told myself it was a temporary break to breathe, but deep down, I knew I was escaping the scrutinizing eyes of Boston's elite, my mother's sighs every time I fell short of her standards. Seattle, with its cloudy skies and sudden rains, gave me the sense of being hidden, of being myself. On my first day as communications director at a tech company, I got lost in the office's maze of hallways. Flustered, I bumped into a tall man, spilling hot coffee all over his shirt. Blushing, I stammered apologies, but he just smiled. No worries, this shirt was ready to retire anyway. I'm Adam Hayes. Nice to become a walking coffee billboard, thanks to you. That smile, that comment, I remember it vividly. It was simple, free of judgment. In that moment, my heart softened. In the days that followed, Adam showed me around, invited me to lunch, and slowly became a constant companion. He was unlike any suitable match my mother had suggested. No prestigious background, no expensive suits, no boastful tone. He was just himself, messy hair, glasses slipping down his nose, radiating natural warmth. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to perform to be accepted. One afternoon, at a small bookstore, I told Adam about my buried passion for photography, dismissed by my mother as a frivolous hobby. He didn't laugh or judge. He stood up and said, "Come on, let's get you a proper camera. Life's too short to miss what you love." That evening, holding my new camera, I felt alive again. I photographed Adam assembling a tripod in our living room, the rain on the window, my own smile in the mirror, a smile I hadn't seen in years. We fell in love without realizing it. Walks in the forest, rainy afternoons cooking together, evenings debating books and music. They showed me I'd found a new home, not of brick and stone, but of love and understanding. But that joy faced its greatest challenge, my mother. When Margaret learned I was dating an unknown software engineer, she was furious. In a long call, she attacked relentlessly. "You're seriously choosing someone with no ambition, no social standing? Is that worthy of our family, Rachel? I'm warning you, if you pick him, don't expect me to accept it." I sat frozen, her words reopening childhood wounds, the fear of never being enough. But this time something was different. I wasn't the trembling girl anymore. Beside me, Adam took my hand, his eyes steady. "I love you, Rachel. Your mom may not accept me, but I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." In that moment, I knew my choice. Months later, on an Oregon beach at sunset, we secretly married. Only a few close friends, Adam's parents and his sister, stood as witnesses. I wore a simple white dress, holding wildflowers. As we exchanged rings, the waves crashed like a blessing, and for the first time, I felt free from invisible chains. But that freedom came at the cost of a heavy secret. Back in Seattle, I played the single daughter for my mother. My wedding ring stayed hidden in a necklace. Adam avoided her surprise visits, and I kept two keys, one for a fake apartment where I lived alone, one for our real home. I lived two parallel lives, and each lie became a burden. By day, I was the perfect Rachel, in my mother's eyes, through phone calls and edited photos hiding the truth. By night, I was the real Rachel, Adam's wife, happy in love. But I knew those two worlds couldn't coexist forever. One day, the truth would explode, and I'd face a fury worse than anything from my childhood. Love gave me freedom, but it also pulled me into a tightening spiral of deception. I still remember trembling as I hid my wedding ring and my necklace before my mother's calls. That was the start of a double life. One side true happiness, the other a false shadow. And I knew tragedy was only a matter of time. If you find this story compelling and want me to continue, comment Y. If it hasn't touched you, comment N. Have you ever lived in a house where even the walls knew your secrets, but you had to pretend you had nothing to hide? For 3 years I lived like that, between two parallel worlds, truth and lies, love and fear. When I turned 30, Adam and I bought a small house in suburban Seattle. It wasn't a grand Boston mansion, just a two-story home with a backyard garden, but to me, it was paradise. Adam set up a corner in the living room for my photos, and in the garden, he planted lavender because he knew I loved its scent. Each morning, I woke to his laughter, sunlight filtering through the curtains, and I knew I'd found true happiness. That joy grew even fuller when Lily was born. I still remember that autumn morning in the hospital when she let out her first cry. Adam, trembling, held my hand, tears falling into my hair. "We're a family," he whispered. And from that moment, I understood unconditional love. Lily had Adam's gray-blue eyes and my slight smile. She became the final piece I'd been missing. But with that joy, fear grew too. My mother, Margaret, knew nothing of Adam or Lily. To her, I was still the single daughter navigating her career. I'd built an entire stage to maintain that lie, keeping my old downtown apartment, occasionally staying there when my mother announced a visit. When she came, Adam quietly left, staying with friends or in a cheap motel. Lily was sent to a trusted friend, or I'd invent stories about her being at summer camp. I'd never felt so cruel as when Lily, at 3, asked, "Mommy, why can't I meet Grandma?" I choked, hugging her and lying, "Grandma's very busy, sweetheart." Each time I felt like I was severing the bond between generations. Adam protested, "Rachel, we can't keep living like this. You're teaching our daughter that love comes with hiding. That's not fair to Lily." I knew he was right, but I wasn't brave enough. My mother's voice still echoed, "If you choose him, don't call me Mom anymore." I was so used to living to please her that I couldn't break down her walls. One memory haunts me. Once my mother showed up unannounced in Seattle. I'd just dropped Lily off at a friend's when she appeared at my old apartment. She walked in, scanned the sparse space, and remarked, "This place lacks a man's touch. You need to spend more time finding a proper husband, Rachel." I forced a smile, but inside a knife twisted. My proper husband was in a cheap motel, waiting for her to leave so he could come home. The conflict grew. By day, I was the fake Rachel, listening to my mother praise other successful daughters or ideal sons-in-law. By night, I was the real Rachel, in Adam's arms, hearing Lily's steady breathing, feeling simple happiness. Those worlds overlapped, exhausting me. I started losing sleep. Many nights, I sat by Lily's bed, watching her sleep, filled with regret. I feared she'd grow up knowing I'd hidden her from her grandmother. This lie wasn't just hurting me, it threatened my little girl. Adam was patient, but I knew he hurt too. Once he said quietly, "I don't need your mom to like me, but I need you to choose truth. I can handle her disdain, but not you living in fear." I cried but stayed silent. That silence became a gap between us. From 30 to 33, I walked a tightrope. On one side, a happy family. On the other, hiding them from my mother. Every family photo was locked in a drawer, never shared. Each time my mother called, I hid my ring in my pocket. I'd turned my life into an endless play. The worst wasn't the lying, but starting to believe it. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that this secrecy kept the peace, that one day my mother would change. But deep down, I knew I was destroying myself. I can't forget Lily's 3rd birthday. She wore the yellow dress I bought, and we had a small cake with 3 candles. We sang and took photos, but when she asked, "Why isn't Grandma here?" I could only hug her, choking back tears. In that moment, I realized my lies weren't just stealing my happiness. They were robbing my daughter of the full love she deserved, forcing her to be a shameful secret. That day, I looked at Adam and whispered, "We can't keep doing this. It's going to blow up someday." He nodded, his eyes heavy with sadness. He knew, and I knew, the rope was stretched too tight, waiting for one sharp tug to snap. 3 years of living a double life wore me down. I knew the truth would erupt soon, but I didn't expect it to happen so brutally, right in the middle of a family gathering with every eye on me. That's when everything I'd hidden for years would be laid bare. If you want to hear more stories like this or relate to my struggles, check out my previous videos on this channel. Some secrets you think you can bury forever, but one sentence can make them collapse like a sandcastle before a wave. For me, that moment came in the summer I turned 35, at my mother's lavish Boston mansion, the place I once called home but never felt at peace in. That year's family reunion was on a scorching day. I hesitated for weeks before deciding to fly from Seattle to Boston. Adam wanted to come, but I knew it was impossible. My mother had never accepted him. How could I bring my husband and daughter to a place where one scornful look could turn joy into a nightmare? So, I went alone, leaving Adam and Lily behind, my heart heavy. Stepping into the grand hall, the scent of white roses and unfamiliar laughter overwhelmed me. Crystal chandeliers gleamed, the table was draped in silk, and crystal glasses stood in perfect rows, a flawless stage. And my mother, Margaret, stood at the center, as elegant and sharp as ever. I sat at the long table, beside Aunt Patricia and Uncle James. The mood was light at first, with talk of jobs, homes, and children. I tried to blend in, nodding and smiling, but felt out of place. I knew the moment I dreaded was coming, when my mother would mention my shameful single status. And it came faster than I expected. As dessert was served, my mother stood, her wine glass shimmering. She smiled, her voice even. "Let's raise a toast to our family's successes. Patricia just bought a vacation home in Cape Cod, Jessica and her husband are expecting their first child, and Matthew got a promotion, so much to be proud of." Applause followed. I clapped too, forcing a smile. Then she turned to me, her tone sweet but laced with sarcasm. "And of course we can't forget our Rachel, my dear daughter, 35 and still single. But there's time, right?" Laughter erupted, tinged with pity and mockery. I froze, my hands trembling. I'd endured this disdain my whole life, but today it was the final straw. I set my glass down, took a deep breath. My heart raced, but my voice was clear and firm. "No, Mom, I'm not single. I've been married for 3 years. Adam is my husband, and Lily, my 3-year-old daughter, is your granddaughter." The room fell deathly silent. Silverware stopped clinking. Eyes turned to me, stunned. Patricia gasped. James let out a surprised whistle, and my mother's face paled. "What?" she snapped. "What did you just say, Rachel?" "It's the truth," I continued, my voice shaking but resolute. "I hid it because you threatened to disown me if I chose Adam, but I can't live a lie anymore." The table erupted in whispers. Patricia muttered, "She has a child?" James looked at me with sympathy, while some relatives shook their heads in disapproval. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. Her eyes blazed. "You dared deceive me for 3 years? You've disgraced this family with a low-life marriage and an unplanned child?" "Don't call my daughter that," I cried, tears spilling. "Lily isn't a disgrace. She's the best thing in my life." The table descended into chaos. Some stood to intervene, others whispered. But Margaret raised her hand, silencing them. "Enough. If you've chosen that path, leave this house now. You no longer belong here." Her words stabbed my heart, but strangely, in that moment, I felt relief. 3 years of lies were over. No more hiding my ring, no more concealing my daughter. I stood, tears blurring my vision, but my voice rang out, "Fine, Mom. If what you call family is just pretense and appearances, I don't need it. I have a real family, Adam and Lily. That's everything to me." I walked away, leaving behind the chaotic murmurs. As I stepped out of the hall, my chest ached but also felt free. The night sky outside seemed vast, cleaner. I knew there was no going back. Sometimes life turns in a single day, and the person you thought was your enemy becomes your only lifeline. I never imagined I'd see my proud, illustrious mother, Margaret Anderson, cry because of the kindness of the man she once despised. My husband, Adam. It started months after that fateful dinner. My mother and I had barely spoken since. She didn't call, and I didn't reach out. Occasionally, Aunt Patricia or Uncle James texted that she was fine, still attending her women's club, still speaking with her signature proud smile. I thought it would stay that way, until rumors exploded. One morning, Patricia called, her voice urgent. "Rachel, haven't you heard? People are talking. They say Margaret embezzled money from the club's charity fund." I was stunned. Embezzlement? My mother could be domineering, but never dishonest with money. Her honor was her lifeblood. I opened my laptop, scrolling through Boston's social forums. The rumors spread like wildfire. An anonymous email circulated, with cleverly doctored spreadsheets accusing Margaret of pocketing thousands. I knew she'd be devastated. For her, reputation wasn't just pride, it was her oxygen in the elite world. A scandal like this could destroy everything she'd built. That night, I found Adam at his computer, his face tense. When I asked, he said simply, "I'm trying to trace who started this. Your mom would never ask for my help, but she's still your mom." I was floored. After all her disdain, Adam chose to stand by her. I watched my husband, his steady eyes, his fingers flying across the keyboard, and saw a strength I hadn't yet found: generosity. For nights, Adam traced IP addresses, compared email timestamps, and cross-referenced club events. I didn't understand all his tech jargon, but I saw his focus. After nearly a week, he turned to me, his eyes certain. "I found it. It's Evelyn Grant, a longtime club member who competed with your mom for president." Adam had proof: tampered files, email timestamps matching Evelyn's personal computer. He compiled it into a detailed report and handed it to me. "Send this to Patricia. Let her give it to your mom. But don't say who did it. I don't need her to know." I choked up. "Why, Adam? After everything she's done to you?" He smiled gently. "I'm doing this for you, for Lily, for our family. Whether she accepts me or not, she's your blood. If she falls you hurt, that's enough for me." My heart tightened. In that moment, I knew Adam embodied what my mother never understood: unconditional love. Days later, the club's tide turned. The evidence exposed Evelyn, and Margaret's reputation was restored. People praised her for standing tall in the storm, unaware of the silent hand behind it. I thought it would end there. But at a tea party, a close friend of my mother's, Helen, let slip, "Margaret, you're lucky your son-in-law is so talented. Without Adam tracing the culprit, you'd have been ruined." I heard my mother was stunned, her face pale. The woman who'd never bowed to anyone learned she'd been saved by the man she'd scorned. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. Opening it, I saw my mother, not her usual commanding self, but a woman with red eyes. She stood silent, then whispered, "Rachel, may I come in?" We sat in the living room. Adam started to leave for the kitchen, but she called out, "Adam, stay, I need to talk." I'd never heard her voice like that, hesitant, trembling. She looked at him and burst into tears. "The son-in-law I mocked and belittled saved me. I was wrong, I'm sorry." I was stunned. Margaret Anderson, who never bowed, was crying before my husband. Adam stepped closer, gently touching her shoulder. "I don't need an apology, Mom. I just want you to see that what matters isn't public honor, it's family. Your daughter's been through enough." My mother sobbed, then turned to hug me. For years, I'd craved that embrace, and now it came in her most vulnerable moment. Before leaving that night, she hesitated. "Next week, the club has a big event. I want you and Adam there. I'll introduce him as family. No more hiding or denying." I looked at Adam, his lips curving into a soft smile. I knew a new door had opened, one of forgiveness and healing. Have you ever stood in a crowded room, every eye on you, knowing that in seconds, your past and present would merge, no longer hidden? I lived that moment at the New England Women's Club's biggest event, a year after the truth exploded at the family dinner. My mother, Margaret Anderson, was the event's centerpiece. She'd nearly lost everything to false rumors, and thanks to Adam's quiet help, she'd regained her standing. Since her tearful apology at our home, our relationship had shifted, not overnight, but slowly, through calls, visits, her gentle moments playing with Lily in the garden, and a softer silence than before. When she sent the formal invitation, "I want you, Adam, and Lily at this year's event. No more hiding. It's time our family steps into the light." I was both elated and anxious. Elated because it was what I'd longed for. Anxious that she'd change her mind or that her announcement was just for show. That evening, Adam held my hand, reassuring me, "Whatever happens, we're family. But I believe your mom's changed. Let's give her a chance to prove it." The event day was a rare, clear day in Boston. I wore a simple navy dress, Adam a sharp gray suit, and Lily twirled in a white dress with a pink bow. Entering the ornate hall, I heard whispers. "Is that Rachel? Who's that man? And that little girl?" Questions I once feared, now real. My mother stood on stage, her silver blonde hair neatly pinned. As the spotlight hit, I saw her hand tremble slightly, a sign only I noticed. I knew this was her biggest test. Her speech began as usual. Thanks, congratulations, impressive charity figures. But then, she paused. Her eyes swept the room, landing on me, Adam, and Lily. She took a deep breath, her voice no longer cold, but resolute. "Today, I want to share something. For years, I valued appearances so much I nearly lost what matters most: family. I rejected, criticized, even threatened to disown my daughter for choosing a man I deemed unworthy. But time and events taught me a lesson. Today, I introduce Adam, my daughter Rachel's husband, part of our family. And this is Lily, my granddaughter, our new pride." The room went silent for seconds, then erupted in applause. My eyes blurred. Adam squeezed my hand, his eyes shining. Lily innocently ran to the stage and hugged her grandmother, sparking laughter and louder claps. I couldn't hold back tears. Years of hiding, waiting for acknowledgement, had finally ended. I saw my mother hug Lily, her shoulders trembling, and I knew this wasn't for show, it was from her heart. After the event, our family took our first photo together. My mother in the center, one arm around me, one holding Lily, Adam beside us, smiling warmly. It wasn't perfect in lighting or composition, but it proved that forgiveness could heal wounds thought irreparable. On the drive home, I leaned on Adam's shoulder, whispering, "See, we came a long way to get here." He smiled. "Yeah, and I think this is just the start of a new journey, one with truth and love, no more lies." I looked at Lily, asleep in her car seat, her soft hair across her cheek. I knew every pain, struggle, and tear was worth it, because I'd protected what mattered most: a family built on real love. Looking back, the greatest treasure wasn't the arguments, tears, or old wounds, but the growth we all achieved. I learned to stand up for my happiness, Adam showed me the power of forgiveness, and my mother, Margaret, bravely let go of her pride for family. Our story isn't perfect, but that imperfection created space for healing and connection. I believe every family has differences, conflicts that seem unbridgeable. But with love, patience, and forgiveness, any gap can shrink. Sometimes a single acknowledgement, embrace, or honest tear is enough to open a new door to love. If this story touched you, leave a comment with your thoughts, hit like, and subscribe to join me in sharing and learning from meaningful everyday stories. Thank you for being here.